What up, guys? That Comic Awesome here doing another review, doing The Hunt for Wolverine #1. And yes, that means Wolverine is officially back, not just back in these little post-credit scenes and stuff like that. Even though he is probably only in this book for 2 pages. It's just exciting to know that maybe the wheels are turning in the right direction. I know, at least on the horizon right now, there is no plans for Wolverine to be coming back into a team book or a solo series of his own, but just knowing he's alive, gives you the warm and fuzzies. So this book is actually 2 stories. And I wonder why they did it this way, but there are 2 distinct stories. Both are written by Charles Soule. The art is drastically different in each story. The first one is, to me, much better. Feels like a really good classic comic book. The latter looks like, I don't know, pretty garbagey to me. But that's my opinion. So we start off with kind of, I wouldn't say this is a backstory. And again, this book, at least the second part of this book, throws the Marvel Legacy timeline into complete disarray. And I'll explain that. I'm going to try and go through the book quick, and then I want to break down why this completely screws up everything. No, not screws up, but makes things very complicated. So you have the Reavers. They are on a mission to get some of Logan's DNA. They want the DNA from Wolverine because obviously with his healing properties and this and that, it's a very sought after thing. So this is obviously pre-Marvel Legacy, because at the end of Marvel Legacy, you see the statue. It is ripped apart and Logan is gone. So you see the statue. It's still in its full form, but what you get to find out is what happens to it and why it's blown apart. So obviously the X-Men come to intervene, but then you get this like really good backstory of them, kind of mourning right after he died. They have this like kind of memorial set up for him. And Storm's like, this doesn't feel right having him, here. So they kind of, phases back, and one of the Reavers, I forget what, Sinla, she has a molecular, what do they call it, rearranger, which would allow her to then get through the adamantium to Logan's body, and that's where the money is. As the X-Men fight, there comes to the great realization, though, that his body wasn't in there at all. Spoiler alert. It's not really a spoiler, but you kind of get into this side story, or backstory. I actually liked it. Maybe not the placement of Logan's body, but I did like what they did here. So they didn't want Logan just sitting up in this like statue. So they got Kitty which by the way, much better looking Kitty, to phase him out, and they are able to separate his body from the adamantium exterior. So then they wrapped him in like an X-cloak and buried him in a field. So I'm going to skip a little bit. You get this really weird cutscene, though, of like Wolverine in all black. Kind of reminiscent of me, like the Superman, and this is now, right now. The Superman, like the death of Superman, like when he came back and he was wearing all black and white. This kind of is what it reminds me of. So I don't know when, you don't know, well, obviously this is right now, but in real relation to the timeline, you don't know when that is. So at the end of this story, Kitty goes to visit him, and actually, no, it's not at the end. It's right here. She goes to visit him, pretty much tells him, you know, like a friend, explaining like, hey, these people tried to rob your body. We were one step ahead of them because they didn't know you were here. And this is the one thing I didn't understand. So look at this. When they buried him, the ground is disturbed. But now the ground is not disturbed, yet somehow she notices the cloak that they draped him in is like hanging in the tree. So they know he is now out, gone somewhere. His body is out there. And that leads kind of onto a hunt of sorts. The hunt for Wolverine. The only thing I didn't like about this was, again, the placement. They just kind of buried him in a field. I guess it's kind of sweet, it's very nice, it's scenic and everything. But I would think you would, I don't know, at the X Mansion or something where you could really keep an eye on him. The next, I'm going to skip the rest of that story. But the next story is kind of where things get fuzzy. So you have Tony Stark here. Tony Stark is alive. Tony Stark has his hair back. Tony Stark is doing Tony Stark things, which completely ruins the timeline, because as of Marvel Legacy, at the start of Marvel Legacy, Tony was in a coma. Tony was in a coma and could not do anything. He hadn't actually. It was in Marvel Legacy that he went missing. So presumably that all happened at the same time. But yet somehow he is out alive. Considering even in his own run, he is just coming back into the fray. I don't like the events of this must happen much later, or at least later, because it seems he's back to really back to getting his bearings as Iron Man. So this must happen much later than that. And then even what happened in Marvel Legacy still happens then after Invincible Iron Man 600. So you get some dialogue between Kitty and them and Tony. And then this is again the part that really again kind of messes up the timeline is you have this scene here where now the X-Men are kind of like, okay, well, we're going to do our part. We're going to go to Madripoor, try and find Logan there. And then you have kind of time-displaced Jean again messing with the timeline, because as of right now in the timeline, time-displaced Jean is a poison, theoretically dead. So if it happens after Invincible Iron Man, that means the Poison X series and current Venomized story happen after that as well, which then pushes the comics that we are reading now into, again, a very distorted and skewed kind of timeline. It's very confusing. This goes into a deeper problem that I have. Marvel right now has, in a good way, taken a step back of doing one major event every year, but then they pitfalled themselves and now doing 1,000,001 different small events and crossovers. Just right now, you have Damnation, Doctor Strange Damnation just wrapped up, which had a 4-issue event crossover with tie-ins. You have Venomized. You have Infinity Countdown, which is a 5 or 6 issue event with tie-ins and everything. And then now you have Hunt for Wolverine with four additional series under it as well. And it makes it hard then when you have all of these separate major events happening that can game change your universe and you're kind of splitting them to where now you can't figure out how each one fits. That's like in Venomized. And actually, that even throws a bigger question, because technically Venomized happens before the death of Jane Foster. So it really skews, what they're doing. I think Marvel needs to take a step back, focus on individual series, and go from there. Quit crossing over for right now. Crossovers are good. Manage them. Bring the excitement down a little bit and go from there. But this ends up with pretty much the last page of Marvel Legacy as well, where you have, Jean at the statue, and she says, "Welcome back." Although before she said, "Welcome back, we missed you." Now she just says, "Welcome back." Either way. But Jean is a poison right now, so again, it's confusing of when this actually happened. So I hope they clear that up. Other than that, the first part of this book, I thoroughly enjoyed. The second part, the art and the continuity issues made it a little distracting, but that's just me. Subscribe over here, watch some more videos, hit me up in the comments, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you next time.